welcome to our breakfast briefing this morning. Really delighted to see you all here today. I think we've got 55 people on the call so far. 175 people have registered. That number tends to creep up as the morning develops. My name is Sarah Lethbridge. I'm the Director of Executive Education and External Relations here at Cardiff Business School. If you want to talk to me about any of the programmes that we offer, then there's my contact details. Please do get in touch. Speech to text captioning is available for this event. It's really important that we're as inclusive as possible. And hopefully John's going to post the link in the chat box now. So I really recommend it actually, following the speech alongside in case there's anything tricky that might come up, but it really does help. And how we do that is that when you click the link, it'll open up a new window. And then what you have to do is you have to sort of manipulate your windows so that you can see Zoom and you can see the text captioning. By doing it in a separate web page, it's totally current and live. So we really do recommend you have a try of doing that. In terms of our next breakfast briefings, on Thursday the 25th of February at 8:30, again, in our usual time, we'll be looking at the awakening of Wales's devolved consciousness. And Will Hayward, who's the current political editor at Media Wales, he's just written a book about how Wales has dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic. So that will be a really fascinating breakfast briefing to hear all about how Wales has been dealing with this crisis and how actually, yes, perhaps it has awakened our devolved consciousness. So yeah, please get in touch. Again, you can talk to me, you can talk to the exec ed team that are really lovely helping us in the background with this event today. We've got lots of different courses on offer. Please come and join us at Cardiff Business School to learn about all the wonderful research that we do. This webinar is being recorded. If you'd like to put any questions to Dr. Hossein, then please do put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Sometimes it appears at the top. And you know, the great thing about today's event is Professor Arman Eshraghi is going to be helping to field those questions, because we know that I don't like getting too technical about some of these things, and Arman can take that pressure away from me. So thanks so much. And now over to you, Arman, to introduce this session and tell us all about the wonderful work that the Business School does in this area. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm Arman Eshraghi, Professor of Finance at Cardiff Business School and co-director of our FinTech Research Group. It is my pleasure, similarly, to welcome you all this morning. In Cardiff FinTech Research Group, we do research. There's a number of academics in Cardiff and outside Cardiff. We do research on various areas of fintech, including, of course, cryptocurrencies and blockchain, but also new forms of banking, new forms of payments, artificial intelligence, machine learning, personal finance, and various other applications of technology in finance. We are very keen to work with the industry to try to help any questions that you might have from within your organizations, and also establish dialogues and conversations. So please do visit our website, and if you would like to establish a conversation with our research group, do feel free to drop me a line. This morning, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hossein Jahanshahloo, a lecturer in finance and the creator of Cardiff University Bitcoin database. The reason we were holding this session on Bitcoin is, in a sense, obvious. Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency was created around 10 years ago. And if you look at its rise in terms of its, for example, market valuation right now, it's coming up to about $600 billion, which is far more than many, many large organizations which have been in existence for far longer. And of course, as the mother of all cryptocurrencies, we know that it divides opinion. We know that some view it as a currency, some may not view it as a currency or a financial asset. We think that the best way to understand what Bitcoin is to dig down and look at the Bitcoin network and how it all works. That would be probably the most efficient way to understand what this thing is about. It is, from a macro point of view, it is very complex. If you look at Bitcoin prices, there are a number of things that influence the way Bitcoin prices move, including, of course, political issues, including the level of trust in the government. So it is a hugely interesting landscape to look at. And I'm sure Dr. Jahanshahloo will cover some of these areas today as well. Please keep the questions coming. I will be seeing you later and facilitate the Q&A. But without further ado, once again, it is my pleasure to hand over to Professor Jahanshahloo for his main lecture.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Arman, for your introduction. Let me start by sharing my screen, if it works. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Well, lovely. So good morning, everyone. Thank you, Arman, again for the introduction. And I'm really happy to say that we are joined here today by different colleagues from different universities and different companies from across the globe. Today, before diving in and introducing CUBiD and what it is, first I will briefly explain what Bitcoin is in very simple terms, and I will explain where the idea for creating Bitcoin came from and how it works and what problems and issues it addresses. After that, I will explain where the idea for creating CUBiD came from, what gap CUBiD fills in the market, and finally I will demonstrate some of the applications of CUBiD in different areas like teaching, research, regulatory, and legal frameworks. Let's start by explaining distributed ledger and how Bitcoin came to be and what problems it solved. One thing that I should emphasize here is that whatever I'm explaining here is an extremely watered down version of Bitcoin and how it works. So if you have any further question or you want to know more in detail, please let me know and I will answer the questions after the presentation. Now, majority of the financial and payment processing systems that we've worked with today are based on centralized ledger. For instance, imagine you want to purchase a product online or in a store, and when you go there and when you click the payment button or when you put your card in the POS and you push the button, the merchant via your card issuer, which is usually Visa or MasterCard, contacts your banks and asks the bank to transfer the amount of the price of the product that you want to purchase from your account to the merchant's account. If you have enough money in your bank would do the transaction and would send a confirmation to your merchant via your card issuer. Now, consider this scenario. Consider that for whatever reason, two spending requests from, let's say, Laura has been sent exactly at the same time to the bank account. And at the same time, the bank checks your bank account because you haven't done any transaction yet. Because these two have gone at the same time, the bank checks your bank account and confirms that you have enough money to do both the purchases, and reduces the fund from Laura's bank account and sends it to other bank accounts. What happens here is that as a result of this, Laura ends up with a negative balance, which means she was able to spend the money that she did not have. This is one of the simplest form of double spending. So that is one of the issues that we have with systems like this called centralized ledgers. The other issue that centralized ledgers have is the problem with record tampering. For example, imagine a hacker is able to infiltrate Laura's bank and changes Laura's bank account and the balance from £100 to £200. Or even worse, transfer some money from some other accounts to Laura's bank account. Now, let's see how we can address this situation and these problems in centralized ledgers with decentralized or distributed ledgers. Let's start by designing a payment processing system. And let's assume that in our ledger and in our system, Laura gets £100. From here on, we record every single transaction that occurs in our system. Let's assume Laura pays £27 to Charlie, then Laura pays £33 to Joseph, and Joseph pays £16 to Sarah. So these are the transactions that have happened in our system. This is what you see here is our ledger. In order to be sure that these transactions are valid, we would ask each of our payers to sign their name in front of the transaction. So when Laura wants to pay £27 to Charlie, we would ask her to sign her name in front of the transaction. It's like signing a check when you want to pay someone else. However, the problem with the signature is that everyone can copy everyone else's signature, especially when it's digital. In order to prevent this, we generate a password for every bank account that we hold in our ledger. And we ask everyone when they want to send a transaction, they have to use this password. For example, for Laura, we create a password that she must use when she wants to make a transaction. A transaction that originates from Laura's account would not be valid until Laura uses this password and signs the transaction with it. This password is 256 bits long. In other words, it has 256 ones and zeros. It means if someone wants to copy or forge Laura's signature to make a transaction from her account, that person has to try 2 to the power of 256 combinations. In order to just compare and understand how and what a big number it is, the number of grains of sand on Earth is estimated to be only 2 to the power of 63. So that number is even, you need to multiply that number 4 times to get to 256. So it's almost impossible to, with this way of protecting a bank account, it's almost impossible to forge anyone's signature. Although we address the issue of signature quite well, there is still the issue of trust. The question is where we should keep our ledger, who should host it. For instance, Charlie doesn't trust Laura or Joseph or Sarah. He's afraid that for whatever reason, they decide not to record this transaction that Charlie receives money from. Because Charlie doesn't trust the other people in the system, he says, you know what? I'm going to keep a copy of the ledger for myself. And whenever there is a new transaction in the system, I will record it in my ledger as well. No offense to anyone, though, it's just to be safe, on the safe side. Laura, Joseph, and Sarah also don't trust anyone. And they say, you know what, Charlie's idea is a very good idea. We are going to do the same thing. And whenever there is a new transaction in the system, we are just going to record it in our ledger. What you see here is how a distributed ledger looks like. This is how we solve the issue of trust. Since everyone holds a copy of the ledger, in order to tamper with their ledger, someone should tamper with almost every single one of these ledgers. Till now, we addressed the issue of trust and security. Now, let's see how we can address the issue of double spending. Let's assume Joseph wants to pay £15 to Rosa. When he wants to do that, he broadcasts this message that I want to send £15 to Rosa to everyone in the network. He announces that I want to reduce £15 from my account and put it in Rosa's account. When he does that, and when he broadcasts this message to the network, everyone in the network starts looking at Joseph's transactions since the beginning of the time and finds every single transaction that Joseph was involved in. So, based on the ledger that we have till now, Laura paid £33 to Joseph. That brought his balance to £33. Then Joseph paid Sarah £16. That brought his balance to £17. Now, Joseph wants to pay 15 pounds to Rosa. Because we know he has 17 pounds in his account, he is able to pay this 15 pounds to Rosa. As a result, this transaction is accepted. Because the transaction is accepted, everyone in the network confirms that Joseph has enough fund to pay Rosa 15 pounds and confirms this transaction and adds this transaction to our ledger. Now, if Joseph wants to pay, after that transaction, wants to pay 30 pounds to Sarah, everyone in the network starts doing the same thing from the beginning. Since Joseph only has 2 pounds left since the last transaction, he cannot pay 30 pounds to Sarah, and this transaction is rejected and will not be recorded in the ledger. While distributed ledger addresses many issues that centralized ledger have and also removes the need for a central authority in the system, it has one issue, and that is the synchronization of the ledgers. In very simple terms, the way that Bitcoin addresses this issue is that if there is disagreement in the system, the version of the ledger that is agreed by 50% plus one of the participants of the network is the correct version of the ledger. For example, imagine in our network, everyone has this copy of the ledger that Laura has 40 pounds in her account. For whatever reason, Charlie has this version that Laura has 38 pounds in her account. Since all the participants in the network are directly or indirectly connected to each other and broadcast their ledger, their copy of the ledger, and agree on what the correct version of the ledger is, Charlie learns that his version of the ledger is different from everyone else in the network, and Laura's balance should be 40 pounds. In this case, Charlie discards that version of the ledger and copies the version of the ledger that everyone else has and updates his ledger and updates Laura's balance to 40 pounds. Addressing this issue here that is called consensus is one of the biggest contribution of the Bitcoin white paper and overall Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, so till now I explained what transactions are, how we secure them, and how they work. In Bitcoin, we organize these transactions into blocks and link them together and call it a blockchain. In a nutshell, Bitcoin is a set of transactions that are cryptographically linked to each other and organized in blocks. Technically, you can consider Bitcoin as the collection of all the transactions in a closed system, such as a bank or an economy. This, till now, what I explained was a very simple and watered down version of Bitcoin, that what it is, how it works. And now I'm going to talk about Cardiff University Bitcoin Database and CUBiD, how it came to be. First, when I was in a conference and I was thinking about the unprecedented potential and the unimaginable amount of data that Bitcoin offers, and how it can be used in academic research, teaching, regulatory application, trading, and much, much more, I could not find anything. I didn't know that much about Bitcoin, but I just knew that Bitcoin data is publicly available and every single transaction is transparent. For instance, because we have access to all the transactions and we can see every single transaction, we can calculate how much each person has at each point in time, and we can see where the money comes from and where the money goes to. The potential of this, that I will explain why it is important, especially for my research, the potential was unlimited. However, in order to do any kind of research, I wanted the data in a very easily and accessible manner, in a workable format. When I started searching for structured data, I couldn't find any. That was very interesting. Although the data is publicly available, it is not easily accessible. I could not find any database that allows me to download the Bitcoin network data in a structured format for my research. As academics, we are used to working with data like this in a structured format. However, when I looked for a usable and easily accessible Bitcoin network data, I couldn't find any. The best that I could find was the API that gives you a data like this. There are many websites and APIs that can be used to construct a database. However, it takes a long time and requires advanced knowledge of programming and database design to do so. The issue doesn't finish here even. Even when you download all the data, validating it and structuring it takes a long time, and it's a complicated and complex task. This was the time when I saw a gap in the market. The gap was a structured Bitcoin network data that can be used by anyone with any level of IT skills. My goal was to create something like this table here. That was when I decided to create Cardiff University Bitcoin Database, or CUBiD. To explain CUBiD and Bitcoin better, let me start with a set of transactions. Let's assume Cardiff University pays me £2,100. I go to Costco, and from this salary, I spend £400 in Costco. I go to my local pub and I spend £100 there. I pay £1,200 for my mortgage, £300 for my car, and £100 for other stuff in the local shop here. Here, by looking at this graph, you can see how much I earn, when and where I spend this money, and how much I'm left with at each point in time. Now, imagine you have access to all of these transactions in the system, and I mean every single transaction. In this situation, you can see a bigger picture. For instance, I'm not the only one who goes to Costco. Other people also go to Costco and shop there. And in this situation, when you look at this bigger picture, you can see how much money every single person spends in Costco, how often they spend this money, and how much money does Costco have at each point in time, and much, much, much more. Now, let's look at even a higher level of data and a bigger picture than that, than what we had before. By having access to all the transactions in the system and observing every single one of them, we can follow the money and see where it comes from and where it goes to. Let's go back to my example of income and expenditure. CUBiD, what it does is that it puts this data and this level of information in a structured and easily accessible format in a single database. I can put that graph that I showed you from my income in a table like this that you see here. Now, while CUBiD makes it easier to get access to Bitcoin network data, working with this data is still not very easy because of its massive size. This by itself is a barrier and reduces the ability of some of the users to work with Bitcoin data. To address this issue, I have created a post-process data layer that is part of the CUBiD. I did this to be sure that the wealth of Bitcoin data can be utilized by anyone from any field and any profession with any level of IT knowledge. Obviously, you need a little bit of ability to work with the data. This, what you see here, is the structure of CUBiD. I'm not going to its detail, but if you would like to know more about CUBiD and the tables that it includes and the variables that it includes, please visit CUBiD's webpage that I will give you the link at the end of my presentation. I started writing the code for CUBiD and collecting the data in September 2019, and the database and the platform became officially operational as of last month. As of this Sunday, there are 667,501 blocks in the system, in the Bitcoin network, more than 609 million transactions, more than 2.3 billion input and outputs, and more than 772 million individual addresses are active and have been involved in Bitcoin network and also available in CUBiD database. Now, let me talk about the applications of CUBiD. CUBiD has research, teaching, regulatory and legal applications, and also application in trading. Because of the complexity of CUBiD's application in trading and shortage of time, I will not cover that part in my talk. However, if you would like to have a chat about it with me, after this session, just send me an email and we can arrange a meeting and discuss that as well. At the moment, I'm cooperating with one of my colleagues in another Russell Group university to design a module based on CUBiD that allows students to learn about Bitcoin and blockchain technology and have a hands-on experience. The aim of this module is to give students in-depth understanding of this technology. A small portion of CUBiD also can be used by BSc or MSc students to give them an experience of working with the manageable larger scale data. I mean, they just get access to a bit of it, not the whole system, because that would be a bit big. And based on that, they can conduct some empirical analysis on Bitcoin. CUBiD can also change the academic research landscape by enabling easy access to Bitcoin network data. At the moment, when you look at the academic papers that are done on Bitcoin, overwhelming majority of them are done only on Bitcoin and with Bitcoin price. Yes, there are many questions that we can answer with by just looking at the Bitcoin price, but these analyses underutilize the treasure of the data that is there because of the technological barrier that they have, which is accessing to Bitcoin network data. Two of the very interesting papers that use Bitcoin network data are this paper that looks at the amount of illegal activity that are financed by Bitcoin, and this paper that looks at the role of transaction fees in Bitcoin blockchain evolution. Currently, I'm also working with two of the leading scholars in this field, and we are working on a paper which is exactly the same title as this talk, called Bitcoin Under Microscope. In this paper, we look at some of the problems of Bitcoin network, and we discuss how to address them. And we also show how CUBiD can be utilized to perform novel and meaningful economic analysis for future research. And we are introducing new areas and new questions for future research. If I want to talk about the potential application of Bitcoin in teaching and research, we are going to be here for a very long time that we don't have. But the last thing that I want to talk about was a very interesting discussion that I had with one of my colleagues in a marketing section of another university. What he wanted to do, which was very interesting for me, was that he wanted to use the Bitcoin data that we have here to observe and study and analyze the consumption behavior of the different kind of Bitcoin users. Now, let's move to other applications of Bitcoin. Here, you can see some of the applications of CUBiD, and I will give some detailed examples of these three cases and discuss the rest of them very shortly afterwards. Let's continue by looking at the application of CUBiD for anti-money laundering and KYC, or Know Your Customer policies. Consider the following events that I'm gonna put forward. On January 12th, exactly 2 weeks ago, Europol announced the takedown of dark market that was the largest illegal dark web marketplace. In 2019 alone, $829 million was spent on dark web, and criminals, based on some estimations, moved more than $2.8 billion to Bitcoin exchanges and cleaned them and washed that money, laundered that money. Also, recent increase in the price of Bitcoin has made it even easier for criminals to launder their dirty money, especially when there is a price hike. Now consider you're a central bank or a regulator who allows payment processing companies to work and or accept Bitcoin. Or imagine you're a bank and your customer wants to deposit the sales of his Bitcoin with you. Or imagine you're a corporation who transacts with your customers using Bitcoin, like many companies that they do right now, or you pay your employees in Bitcoin, which there are some companies that they do this right now. One of your main concerns would be and should be that whether the Bitcoin that is entering your books and your accounts, is it originated from a legitimate source, or it comes as a result of proceeds of illegal activities? By using CUBiD, you simply can trace the origin of each transaction and observe where it comes from. I should clarify and emphasize something here. CUBiD by itself does not provide the algorithm or the database for suspicious addresses and activities, but it allows you to design and develop a tailor-made algorithm and database for yourself. And obviously, Cardiff University being a Russell Group university, other schools in the university, they can help you to implement and design your own algorithms and databases. Let me give you two examples of such activities that had happened in the past. The first one is about the NHS. If you had followed the news last year, you might have seen that the NHS was hacked by a group of hackers, and they were asking for hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they were blackmailing NHS that either to pay this money in the form of Bitcoin or it will loses its data. One of the addresses that was used for this hacking was this address. This blackmailing address received close to 20 Bitcoin, which with today's price is around $680,000 from 87 addresses. Then the person who was behind this address sent the money from that address to two other addresses, and then from those two other addresses to some other addresses, and so on and so forth. What we can see here is that because of the transparency of Bitcoin network, the entities like this, they try to hide their money trail by sending their money to various accounts. One of the applications of CUBiD is that it can be used to develop and design algorithms that identify such suspicious activities and such suspicious addresses. Now, for example, look at this article from DOJ website, that how 3 terrorist groups used Bitcoin to fund their terrorist activities. They advertise their Bitcoin addresses. I have covered majority of the texts. It's not a bad picture. They had advertised their Bitcoin address on their social media, and they were able to raise funds from across the globe. However, Department of Justice successfully seized the funds raised by these groups. Again, CUBiD can be used in such investigations to prevent funding terrorist activities. Based on CUBiD, regulators or organizations can classify transactions to different risk levels and implement AML and or KYC policies. If I want to summarize this part, I can say cryptocurrency is likely to be a broadly used mean for transactions in the future. However, the increasing number of fraudulent actions, such as money laundering and terrorist financing, is becoming a barrier. To fight these violations, FATF has implemented regulations on all digital currency transactions. The fines have developed, and KYC and AML checks should be more robust. Hence, any AML screening is a necessity for crypto businesses, and CUBiD is here to help different businesses. Now, let me give an example about the implication and application of CUBiD for revenue and tax authorities. At the moment, HMRC cannot use a third-party notice without a taxpayer or tax tribunal approval. And also it needs to prove that the information that it is asking for is reasonably required. However, remember as I mentioned before, Bitcoin removes these barriers because it is completely transparent. Everything that is out there, everyone can have access to. So there are many companies, and that's the reason you have many applications for it. As I mentioned before, for example, there are many companies that they pay their employees in Bitcoin and with Bitcoin. One of the areas that CUBiD can help authorities with is that whether the declared tax on these incomes is in line with the regulations, or whether the regulations should change and can be adjusted to reflect these new payments. The other area that CUBiD can help authorities with is to verify whether the declared income by individual is correctly calculated, and whether the tax that they are paying on their income because of trading Bitcoin is correct. Let me give you an example. Let's assume that a person goes to HMRC. This is just an example. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Let's assume that a person declares that he has 2 addresses, and these are the 2 addresses. and he has made a certain amount of profit or loss because of trading Bitcoin with these two addresses. When CUBiD looks at these two addresses, it would tell you definitely that if the person owns these two addresses, he definitely owns this address as well. This is a definite 100% certain thing. And it seems that the person had forgotten to declare that the third address. If we look at the income from the two addresses that the person has declared initially, we can see that he has made $2 loss. However, when we also consider the third address that we know belongs to this person, we see that $2 loss increases to $20.79 profit. And obviously $2 has a different implication for tax than $2 loss has a different implication tax than $21 profit. Finally, CUBiD can be used also in legal and cases. CUBiD can be used to investigate or be used to settle a dispute over transactions, can be used to investigate missing or stolen Bitcoins, and also can be used to track stolen Bitcoins. And since Bitcoin's ledger is tamper-proof, technically it is an admissible piece of evidence in court, theoretically. Let me talk about the other applications of Bitcoin. CUBiD can help regulators in designing and developing the legislations that they need. We can help them to see what the problem in the system is or what the situation in the system is and help them to design the regulations that they need. It can significantly make the work of accountants and auditors easier and improve their accuracy and hopefully we wouldn't see problems or issues like the Wirecard that we had before. CUBiD can also help financial institutions to develop Bitcoin pricing model and trading strategies. And also finally, central banks like the Central Bank of Japan or the European Central Bank that are pursuing issuing their own digital currencies, they can use CUBiD to validate and test their hypotheses and address the issues that existed in Bitcoin and much more applications that I'm not going to go through. In conclusion, am I the first person who has collected such data? Obviously no. But am I and is CUBiD the first platform that allows everyone to access such data and allows different entities to use this data to tailor-make their own platform and use the data in the way that they need? That's a yes. My future goal is to add more cryptocurrencies to CUBiD and make it a platform that makes a real difference and has a real impact in our society. If you would like to know more about CUBiD, please visit CUBiD's webpage and download the user's manual from the right-hand corner of the website. In the user's manual, we can see the tables and the included variables in CUBiD in much more detail. Finally, if you would like to be in touch with me, this is my email address. Let me bring this on. So this is my email address and this is my Twitter handle. If you scan this QR code here, it would bring you to CUBiD's website. That the link is also here. And this is CUBiD's email address. If you have any question regarding CUBiD, please contact us. And finally, if you want to follow CUBiD, this is the CUBiD's Twitter handle. And if you scan this QR code, it would allow you to follow CUBiD. So if there is, I'm going to leave this here for a while. If there is any question, I would be more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Hossein, for this very interesting presentation. I'm in the fortunate position to see the questions, and we've got many questions across a huge range of issues. And I will try, to the extent that is possible, I will try to group them into thematic groups. Let me take one which is simple to answer, and of course might be relevant. Someone called Fan has asked, can we apply for a PhD in this area since I'm a financial economics student?
You should talk to Arman.
So what I would say to you, Fan, is we would love to hear from you and from anyone else in the audience who wants to continue their studies in this and any other financial research topic. We have a vibrant PhD program in the business school. Please feel free to check our webpage, and you can contact any of the academics for a more exploratory conversation. One thing to note is you have to think about an idea for your research, which we call a research proposal. Brilliant. So great to hear about your interest. Right. We have a question, Hossein, from Andrew Glanfield, which goes, thanks, Hossein. Does this mean that local ledgers would continue to grow in size? Will there be issues with data storage after a period?
So the size of the Bitcoin is increasing, but since every block is around 1 or 2 megabytes, it shouldn't be that much of an issue, especially nowadays that everyone has terabytes of space. But yes, it is in gigabytes of data right now if you want to download it. Mm-hmm. And especially if you want to download it in a format like CUBiD, that would be even bigger. But overall, the answer to your question is yes and no. So it grows in size, but considering the amount of computing power that we have nowadays, it is not really an issue.
Thank you for that. We have a slightly related question from Joshua Clough, if I'm correctly pronouncing your surname, Joshua, which says, currently, when making a Bitcoin transaction, payment is not immediate and users incur a small mining fee. Does Bitcoin have a place despite costless alternatives in such situations?
So one of the problems that I'm going to answer it in 2 ways, in 2 sections, I mean. So the first part is that one of the problems that Bitcoin has is the relatively high transaction fee that you have relative to what you're transacting. However, it really depends on the price of Bitcoin. But the other thing is that they are trying to design other systems to address this issue. So the answer is yes or no. It depends on the direction of the future and what other alternatives we would have in the future. So yeah, I think it does have a place in the future, but its problems should be addressed. That's the reason we have CUBiD, that people can study and see how they can address these problems and issues.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions about CUBiD itself. Someone anonymous has asked, will CUBiD be mining its own Bitcoins?
No, never.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add to that, or?
CUBiD is just a database to provide access to Bitcoin data. It's our main goal, and my main goal in creating CUBiD was just to remove the barrier that exists out there for researchers and regulators, especially, to use CUBiD to be able to make use of Bitcoin much better. Yes, one of the discussions that I had with one of my colleagues was, you are doing this and illegal activity, and other companies also do similar stuff, and you're pushing criminals away from Bitcoin. And that is the whole purpose. Other cryptocurrencies nowadays are not as accessible and useful, and they are not widely accepted as Bitcoin. So if we push them to other cryptocurrencies, we have achieved quite a good goal.
Okay, thanks, Hossein. There's a couple other questions about CUBiD, and then I'll move to more generic questions about Bitcoin. So on CUBiD, you mentioned the data you have is free for anybody to access. Is there any mechanism to help users of CUBiD trust the data it provides?
Okay, 2 things. It is not free to access. CUBiD is a commercialized product from Cardiff University. But you can have a free trial if you would like. You can just go to the CUBiD website, and we have the section there how you can access and contact us and have a free trial. But regarding the validity of CUBiD, I'm not going to go to detail, but before doing my PhD in finance, I was a software developer for many years. So the way that the CUBiD is tested and done and created is that we have, and I have more than 3 layers of validation for every data that is added there. So we do cross-reference and cross-validate our data to be sure that it is valid and rigorous for academic application. That is one of the most important thing, and one of the biggest difference that CUBiD has with some of the not very similar, quite similar data out there, that it has been tested many, many times. And also one of the other things that CUBiD has that no one else has is the additional post-process data layer that we have in CUBiD.
Brilliant. 2 more questions. One from Rhys Denton on CUBiD. One of the key selling points of using Bitcoins is privacy. Could CUBiD put this under threat?
I read a very beautiful paper at the very beginning when I started working on CUBiD that yes, CUBiD and Bitcoin, I mean, was supposed to be anonymous, but we use Bitcoin and we conduct transactions on the infrastructure of the internet. Internet is not anonymous. You can see everyone's IP address. Yes, some people do use VPNs, but majority of the transactions that are out there, you can see their IP addresses and track them somehow. For example, if you remember, there was a Twitter last year tweet hack of some of the famous people that send me $1,000, I will send you $2,000. The guy was arrested in 3 days' time. So yes, it was supposed to be anonymous, but you use the internet, so it's not really anonymous.
Excellent, thank you. And can I just, in brackets, thanks everyone for all the questions which are coming. Great to see the number popping up.
I just answered one question from Jack Davis. Lovely to see you, Jack, here. Does CUBiD bridge a gap between pseudonymous or anonymous chain data and the real-world identity? So CUBiD does not do that, but there are services out there or free website like Wallet Explorer that you can put the data out there, put the address that you want, and see which block or which wallet it belongs to. One of the things that CUBiD does is that in real time, it updates the wallets and groups different addresses into wallets, and you can see which address belongs to which wallet. And if you're able to identify them, you can see who owns what. But we don't do that.
Right. Thank you, Hossein, and thanks, Jack. Question from Shaheen. I was wondering whether your data are covered by GDPR.
You mean regarding
the
regarding the information on customers or information on Bitcoin? Because the information on Bitcoin is out there, is freely available. You can go to thousands of Block Explorer website and have that data. But regarding our customers, we follow Cardiff University's guideline and policies that obviously is very tight.
Okay, thank you. Question from Kevin Holland. Can you tell us more about mining, how the process of mining takes place?
So if you remember at the beginning, I talked about the fact that there are different transactions there. And when you want to conduct a transaction, you broadcast your transaction to the network, and people start checking from the beginning how much money you have at each point in time and confirm whether your transaction is valid or not. So there are many people in the network who are doing this and are putting these transactions in a block and validating this block. Bitcoin is designed, I'm not going to go to too much detail, but Bitcoin is designed in a way that a person would be chosen technically randomly. A person who can who can put a set of transactions in a block and also solves a mathematical question would be able to create a new block and adds it to the network. So the new block that that person creates includes the verified transactions and includes the transactions that they are valid, and the person adds this to the block. This process is called mining. When a person does find this block, he is rewarded with, at the moment, 6.25 Bitcoins. That is mining process in a very simple term.
Thank you. Thank you. I must say, given the huge number of questions we're receiving, if any remain unanswered, Hossein will kindly provide an answer within the next couple of days, and we will communicate that to you. So thank you very much for your engagement. Hossein, we have so I think it might be appropriate to move to more macro topics now, more big picture questions. We have a question from Joshua Clow. Do you think that the current regulatory approach towards trading in cryptocurrencies is adequate?
Oh, that's a very long answer. But before answering that question, I just should emphasize that last year I was involved in a program called Aspect Success, which is a program organized by Cardiff University and 8 or 9 other universities, and with lovely people from Oxford University as well. And they supported CUBiD to develop and grow, not to develop, but to grow to what it is right now. So I really want to thank the people in Aspect and my support from Ariel, Sophie, and Matt from Research and Innovation Services. What about the regulation on trading? So there are some on trading Bitcoin. So nowadays, since Bitcoin has become such an attractive tool and unfortunately is being used in lots of illegal activities, some countries have started regulating it, and they are saying that trading Bitcoin is like trading foreign currency, and the exchanges that they are trading Bitcoin should fall under the regulations that they have for foreign exchange trades and foreign exchange exchanges. So in that regard, there are some movements, but obviously more needs to be done. And like the foreign exchange market, that is kind of regulated and also not regulated, because if you regulate them in one location, they would move to other locations. There are much more to be done. I hope this is an enough answer.
Thank you very much. Question from Yu Shu. Thanks for the presentation. I see most examples discussed here relate to B2C and C2C network. And could you share views on business to business, for example, interbank transactions and cross-border interbank transactions?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So in one of the AML cases that I had, I was talking to one of the European central banks, and that was when I came up with the payment systems. What they do is that either they by themselves through the banks in that European country or with the central bank, they have the transactions that they transact and they transfer cryptocurrencies between themselves. So again, one of the tasks that they have is checking for anti-money laundering and KYC policies. And that is one of the things that CUBiD can help people to do.
Brilliant, thank you. We have a couple of anonymous questions, which are interesting and probably not terribly surprising. So one is, can you provide an estimate for where the Bitcoin price might be in a year's time?
That part, I'm not going to go to the price of Bitcoin.
Secondly, has the UK blocked the transfer of funds to a UK-based bank from the sale of Bitcoins? Are you aware there is any?
I was aware of the case that last year they would not allow you to use, some of the banks would not allow you to use your credit card to purchase Bitcoin, but I'm not aware of any ban that has happened at the moment. No, I don't know that. If there is, at least I have no information about it.
Brilliant. Okay. On the issue of price, I just want to add to Hossein's comments that it is extremely complex to be able to predict where the Bitcoin market is going to go within the next year or within the next 2 years because of the range of factors that influence the market price. And still the rules of this economy are being discovered in a sense. So it is really difficult to be able to say with any degree of certainty.
Just ask one more thing exactly on what you mentioned. So as Arman mentioned, it's quite complex to answer that question. Mm-hmm. But in the paper that I'm working with Andrew from Reading and Felix from Durham, we are showing some of the variables that have correlation with Bitcoin price and some of the technical measures that have correlation with Bitcoin price. But we are keeping it open for future research. So if you look at our paper, you will see some indication there, but I'm not going to comment on where the price is going to go.
Okay. How can people read the paper when it's been published, Hossein?
Hopefully it would be out by the end of either mid-February or end of this month. And when it's out there, I will put it on my profile and everyone hopefully can access and give us feedback.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Any final words from you, Arman, about what you've heard today, and to leave our audience with some great insight into the wonderful work that we do at the business school?
Definitely. So, Sarah, does this mean we have to draw to a close right now? Because I'm thinking we have still 6.
If you've got a burning question, get it in there.
Okay.
I like to be very prompt at ending at 9:30. So one more burning question.
I just answered one question, which is a very valid question from Tim. Nice to see him here. That I mentioned that we are going to add some other cryptocurrencies to CUBiD. So the next cryptocurrency that we are planning to add to CUBiD, which is not going to happen soon, but it would be the next one, is Ethereum. And then after that, we will see how it goes. So that would be the next cryptocurrency that would be added to CUBiD.
Brilliant. I would just say thank you very much again, Hossein, for this interesting talk. And we are all students, in a sense, in the Bitcoin knowledge economy. It is something that is extremely fascinating. We're all learning about it as academics, in a sense. So more than happy to engage with you and hear your questions. And once again, please check out our research group webpage and keep in touch with the business school. And hopefully look forward to seeing you in the next breakfast briefing.
Oh, thank you so much,
everyone. Thank you very much for attending.
Thanks so much. I think I understand what Bitcoin is, everyone. So this is a great achievement. So thank you so much. And I think we just touched 100 attendees at one point. So thanks everyone for joining. Please get in touch. Follow the wonderful research of Dr. Jahanshahloo and Professor Arman Eshraghi. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.